But today,
So I just had this really cool opportunity to speak to a room full of clergy about environmental justice. And specifically, my talk was about the history of theological education and how it's evolved today into, talking about it and preaching about ecotheology. And and by the time we got to the end of our presentation, one of the ministers asked, "So I hear you talking about eco-theology, and I hear you talking about, I hear you talking, right? I hear the importance of trees, the importance of us paying attention to trees. I hear you, but her question was then, so how you expect me to sell this to my congregation?" And immediately I began to think about, how do you sell, the experiences of, how do you sell tree care to a community that doesn't typically engage in that conversation, especially in spaces of faith. And I immediately thought, let the tree sell itself. You don't have to sell eco-theology, right? Specifically from a Christian perspective or a Christian tradition. Sell the cross. And that sounds simple at first, except for when you realize that rather you are a Jehovah's Witness, rather you are Christian, rather you are Universal Foundations to better living. I believe that's another faith tradition. If you at least subscribe to the cross, subscribe to Jesus, birth, life, and death and resurrection, then you could just sell the cross. The cross was made of wood. And so you don't have to think about so much about how do I make this relate? How do I connect this? Just finish the story. You already have the full story. The full story is that Jesus walked this walk, and then a group of religious leaders and soldiers took a hammer and nails in hand and put a tree on Jesus's back and walked him up to Calvary and then hung him there to die. And if you don't think of it like, how do I make eco-theology fit? Instead, just think of, finish the story. The story is from the perspective of a tree that was cut down, separated from its community, separated from its family, dismembered, and then slapped on the back of somebody else, slapped on the back of a slave, slapped on the back of a man who was walking to his death. And together they walked. That man carried the tree up the hill. He could have dropped it. He could have put it down. He could have decided that he wasn't going to carry it anymore. But instead, when it got more difficult to carry, another man came and helped him carry that tree up that hill. And then once they got up that hill, that man was then hung on that tree. Blood dripping into that tree. Sweat from the walk dripping onto that wood. Tears from the agony and pain that he was experiencing dripping onto that wood. And then even as that man took his last breath, it was the tree that carried him. And then the man would be taken off of that tree, and now the tree would carry the proof that that man was who he said he was. It would carry the blood. It would carry the tears. It would carry the sweat. It would carry the skin cells, the broken skin tissues of that man on that tree. And then once that man would leave and be gone, it would be only the tree that could hold the physical, material proof of who that man was. And that that man was here. And that that man did exist. And the reality is, even people believe it. Even those that didn't want to believe that he was who he said he was, needed to believe it so much until they held on to and sold parts of that wood. The thorns on his head, they have put that away into a protected shelter for preservation. So you don't have to sell the tree, sell ecotheology. It is all throughout the text. All you got to do is finish reading the rest of the story and see all of the life that was redeemed in that one act. Nobody was left out. Jesus carried sins and a tree. Jesus carried iniquities and bodies. Bodies. He had a body on his back. Body. The earth. And so for any minister, especially that's trying to figure out how to sell ecotheology, or even trying to understand ecotheology without getting to a place where you're worshiping the earth, all you got to do is finish reading the text. Just finish reading it. It's all in there. Hope that helps somebody.